Okay. Welcome to the Intern Nanny powered by Exarban podcast. I'm Shauna Dorsey, Executive Director of the initiative, and I'm here with my co-hosts today.
Justin Krug. I am a startup employee by day and a startup advocate and community engagement force, if you will. So involved in lots of things. I love startups. I love helping people find their way, stumble their way into startups. So the Nebraska Startup Job Mixer coming up April 19th. Very excited for that. And 1 Million Cups, Scale Omaha. So lots of things.
Love it. And we're here with...
Yeah, I'm Eric Reichwald. I'm one of the co-founders of Shift Solutions. We're a small startup company that does mostly software development for meteorological and geospatial intelligence for the Air Force.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Before we get into it, Justin, I want to say I love how you always pitch everything up front. That's like...
Thank you.
Power move right there. Yes. So Eric, thanks for being here with us today.
Yeah.
So a little bit before we get into it, it's 10-ish minutes. I think last time, this is a take two as an honest person and what happens here on the Intern podcast.
Right.
Take two, but 10-ish minutes.
Yeah.
And if it goes longer, it goes longer because the conversation will go where it goes. But tell us about how you got here, like to not tech, because we all have that beginning, to into tech, to co-founder of Shift Solutions.
Love that.
Not tech, but just in...
Well, like your journey into tech.
Yeah. So the super abridged version, right? I joined the Air Force right out of high school, was a weather forecaster for 10 years in the Air Force. And my last couple years, my passion for software and computer nerdism in general kind of led me to be moved into the software development shop here at Offutt, where they maintain the data center for Air Force weather. So really kind of fell in love with that side of the house, even though I was a weather geek. And so I decided to get out of the military and stick with the software side, but kind of blend the two worlds together. So take my meteorological know-how and my desire to do software stuff. Did a stint at another startup that was doing similar work for the Air Force, and then tried my hat going downtown.
As an employee, right?
As an employee, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was software developer zero, so I kind of started up the software team there.
Yeah.
Then went and tried my hat downtown to just see what not working for the government would be like. And then kind of had an opportunity present itself with myself and a couple of my co-founders to go back to the project that we'd all originally met on when I was in the military and they were working as civilians and contractors, and started with just the three of us. And over the last 6-ish years now, we've grown to about 30 people, and we're on 4 or 5 different contracts now for the Air Force. So, yeah.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Gosh, see, I love the story being, at an organization where you were one of many, then found your way to be the first person, right? Like kind of ground zero, one of the foundational pillars of that team as a non-founder. And here you are today.
Yeah.
So yeah, very, very passionate about that kind of story. How instrumental was that experience of just being just an employee at an early company? Like, do you think you'd be where you are today without that?
I've always kind of had an entrepreneurial spirit, my dad built houses when I was a kid. And so I've kind of always just seen the, be your own boss kind of thing. So I think I would have worked my way there, but it certainly wouldn't have been as easy of a jump for me.
Fast tracked.
Yeah, for sure. Having that insight. And I know you talk about that a lot with your experience at Workshop, and just being part of a small team like that, you really get to see a lot of things that you don't necessarily get to see when you go work at a larger company, because you kind of just have your little thing that you work on. So, and for a person like me that likes to do a bunch of different stuff, I really thrive in that environment where you have something different you can work on every day, and you kind of get to see behind the closed doors on how everything works.
Yeah. The way I look at it is there's this mantra of like a startup accelerator, right? Being an early stage employee at a startup is almost an accelerator for your career,
for sure.
And for, your timeline or roadmap for starting something of your own.
Right.
Your mileage may vary, but it sounds like that is definitely, rang true for the both of us. So
wow,
for sure.
That's really true. I'm thinking too, like I've run a small company before and had employees where they had to wear many hats, and I too wore many hats, but I was just like, this is just what we do.
Yeah.
But for people that were early career, I think it really does make a huge difference that I hadn't thought of until you mentioned it here, where I'm like, oh yeah, they're learning a lot because they don't just have the one task.
Right.
It's like you wear whatever hat needs to be worn that day,
Yep.
Yeah.
or you don't make it. Honestly,
You learn what you like,
Mhm.
what you don't like. And
Exactly.
that's, going back to kind of the intern lens, right? Like
Mhm.
that's huge. You
Mhm.
got to learn that as
Definitely.
fast as possible. And going back to the Nebraska Startup Job Mixer for just a second,
Mhm.
selfish plug.
No, please
That's
do.
why I started it,
Mhm.
frankly, was to try and allow more people to get that exposure into, companies early stage where
Yeah.
whether it's an internship or their first gig out of college, right?
Mhm.
To allow them to learn really, really fast,
Yeah.
get a ton of experience, or, obviously find what they like, but
Right.
also more importantly, like maybe what they don't like. Like, "Oh, I
Mhm.
tried that because no one else, at the company was able to do it, didn't have the bandwidth. So I took it on and wow,
Right.
I really like that. Or actually I didn't. So, so important early on.
Agreed. Wow, this is can go down an entire different path because I'm thinking of many different things, which I won't go into just yet. If
Okay.
we have time, I'll come back to it.
Okay.
But tell us about your experience. Like you said, you've been an up and comer in tech. You've kind of held all the roles, especially that kind of internship type of position. Can you talk about the importance of like mentors you've had and why that role is so important to those early career individuals?
Yeah, no, for sure. That's a big part of it, right? And I mean, I think that ties a lot to kind of my passion for having the internship program and being able to kind of pass that along to the next generation. Even back to my time in the Air Force, I can think of my first real supervisor, Davey Lewis, who, was always the one kind of, if I had an idea for like, hey, this forecast worksheet we fill out, like we could automate a bunch of these things, like if we just plug this thing in, and he's like,
Mhm.
okay, we'll put together a plan and do it, right? And
Yeah.
kind of just giving people the runway to go and do those things
Mhm.
and run with those things. It kind of just builds up that confidence that, like I kind of have this broken record saying that, it's on our website and everything, but like we say we started the company because we just get tired of people saying, well, that's the way we've always done it. Right.
Yeah.
Mm.
And that's kind of just always been our motto is like, hey, like, not to say that everything that's been done a certain way is always bad, but
Mhm.
like, that shouldn't be the reason that you're doing something that is just because it was the way you've always done it. Right. Like,
Yeah.
is it still the best way to do it? Or is there a
Mhm.
better way to do stuff? And so,
Yeah.
having those mentors that really kind of both empower you to kind of go out there and try it yourself. And, sometimes I've certainly had plenty of ideas that I thought were going to solve world hunger that turned out not
Same.
being that interesting at all.
Yeah.
But, you get used to like, taking those failures and then
Right.
moving into the next idea and rolling out the next idea. And hopefully, you finally get to something that sticks.
That is
Mhm.
so cool. Like, I think for me, I mean, you named the person by name. I could do the same with an intern program or internship rather that I had when I was in my undergrad, and it made all the difference for me. And without that, I certainly wouldn't be where I am today. And it changes you, and you almost want to pay it forward.
Right.
So I know you mentioned that. So reflecting on your experience as an intern and those people, that person you named, right, that just had an instrumental part of your life and helped you get to where you're at. What are some like key takeaways from the person hiring the interns now? Like what would have been some of your takeaways from that, reflecting on your experience?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think to what you were talking about before, as far as just people coming into a startup landscape, it really, you kind of have to constantly be rewinding yourself a little bit to remember what life's like when you don't know how all this stuff works, right?
Right.
And so
Yeah.
when people come in and they have all this stuff and it's like, hey, you can do whatever you want today, and it's like, well, I need a box, right? Like I need to know
Mhm.
whatever I want means. Like, what's the scope of
Give
this,
me a
right?
little
Yeah,
direction.
give me something
Yeah.
something to go off of, right? So I mean, just sometimes you get people in the tech field specifically, right? Sometimes you get people that know this tech or they don't that tech, and you get 3 or 4 interns together that know different stuff, and then so you kind of help coach them into teaching each other a little
There's
bit,
a
right?
magical thing that happens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, just really kind of trying to find what inspires them, right? And we definitely, I want to make sure we revisit some of the things we talked about in the last take, because one of the things was making sure that the interns get something positive out of the
Mhm.
experience, right? And kind of
Right.
making sure that they are growing and whatnot, and kind of having that attitude of,
Yeah.
you know, I, I always say that it's really number one a recruiting thing, right? Like it's not necessarily about do the interns make me X dollars during their time here during the summer,
Mhm.
or even do I turn them into a full-time employee when they leave? It's really about, do they have a genuinely good experience? Do they feel like they learn something if they go back to college in the fall, or they go out into the workforce and they have their LinkedIn profile, like, are they going to give somebody a referral to your company? Are they
Yeah.
going to say good things about it? Are they going to say that they had a good time? Right.
Yeah. Going back to
Exactly.
that was the question that we asked in that first one. And I think there was a really great conversation that happened. And you alluded to a lot of it then, was just setting the table for the viewers, like the misconceptions or hesitations for the hirers, right? Like the
Mhm.
ones hiring interns. Sometimes it almost gets like a bad rap, right? Because it's like, oh, well, it's costly and it's time
Takes
consuming.
a lot of
And
time. Yeah, exactly.
so yeah, and I think you touched on that just then. Anything else that you would add to that point?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the other points I made last time, and I think is really important, especially for the startups, is sort of kind of stress testing some of your company's preparation to move up to the next level, right?
Yeah.
Or whether you've had some employees or you're getting ready to grow, you kind of always have those step changes, like going from, 1 to 5 is sort of a big deal. And then like 5 to 10 is a really big deal. And then like
Mhm.
30 is like a completely different ballpark. Right.
Right.
And so, when you're just a couple folks, it's easy to have, how everything works in your head. And I just know that I need to do that and this person needs to do that. But if you had
Right.
to ask somebody else to do it, is there documentation? Is there a process? Is there a procedure? Like, would somebody else be able to do that thing for you?
Mhm.
And having interns is a really good way to kind of low risk test some of those things out, right? Like say, hey, can you guys help us do this thing? Let
Right.
them go try to do it and say, hey, if you get to a point where you don't know what to do, like that's a mental note that we need to write that down, right? And we
Mhm.
need to polish that thing up, right? And they
Yeah.
genuinely, most of the ones that we've had, really love helping put that stuff together and kind of
Right.
feel like they're on that foundation of the company and building out a lot of those processes and procedures and whatnot. It gives them a lot of
Exactly.
ownership.
Ownership. It's a meaningful experience. It feels like you're adding value to the community in a different way.
Yeah.
Right. So that's pretty cool.
And there's
Just-
learning that happens on both sides, right?
Definitely.
The interns are learning a ton.
Yeah.
The company, you, manager, right? Like maybe if you're starting something for the first time, you've never built out a team of your own. Like
Right.
Yeah.
interns are
Supervising.
a nice low risk way to figure out how to be a manager, right? Everyone's learning.
Exactly.
It's just
And
super
even
beneficial.
in a software space, if you've got mid to senior developers, like a lot of them like to do that mentorship piece, so it kind
Mhm.
of gives them a chance to kind of look at new fresh things here
That's a
and
good
there
point.
and get worked into that a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, we all, I think in this room, and I think many of the viewers would agree, right? Like it fills your cup up to
Mhm.
feel like you know something well
Yeah.
enough to share it with somebody else and help them understand it and get further ahead.
And I always say a little bit maybe jadedly, but a lot of us will take shortcuts when we're doing stuff by ourselves. But when you're trying to set that example for the younger generation,
Yes.
it really makes you think like, okay, so don't look at that code because I know I shouldn't have written it that way.
Mhm.
So I'm going to
Yeah.
go home this weekend and clean it up. And then I'll come back Monday and show you a better
Right.
way to do it. Right. And it kind of holds you to that standard that you should be operating at, but that you maybe aren't all the time.
Yeah.
Mhm. So good.
Yeah.
Eric, thank you for being here. I know there's much more we could cover. This
For
could be
sure.
a 2-hour-long podcast.
It really could.
With you. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Bye, everyone.
Yeah.